had family support from the jump, really. And mum and dad, you know, never kind of looked at me funny when I said I wanted to be an actor. I think, in fact, they looked at my grades and thought, no, it's probably a good thing, actually. Scientist is off the table. You can barely count, and you don't know much about history, so it's probably a good thing. And they all, you know, come from a medical background. Oh. So I was constantly reminded that, you know, my family were better than me, but they were always gonna support me, and I was very grateful for that. I also went to a school that wasn't a performance school per se, but they were very passionate about the arts, and they were very supportive of kids who didn't necessarily lend themselves to academics as well.
Well put.
Which is it. Thank you. Yeah, it's a gentle way of putting it.
So there was no pressure to become a doctor then from an early age?
No, I think my dad quickly realised that wasn't going to be realistic for me. Mm-hmm. But I think, you know, I annoyed them with enough impressions and put on enough shows in the living room that, you know, they thought that performance would be something that I would want to pursue. And, you know, I have to say a huge thank you to my drama teachers, Simon Parker, but particularly Laura Lawson, who, you know, really was that teacher that made a huge difference in my life, and I think gave me a real sense of purpose at school, you know. And I was a pretty unhappy kid, to be completely honest with you, at school, and I think that's largely because, and by the way, very lucky, went to a great school and couldn't have asked for more in the way of support from my parents, but unhappy because I felt like I didn't really have anything to offer until I went into that, you know, drama room, and I had a teacher like Laura really believe in me and feed my passion and kind of...
Was it perhaps that being someone else gave you a kind of escape from mundane reality?
I think so. I think I've always borrowed identity in a way. You know, I think playing other characters and spending time inhabiting other psychologies has been a way of developing my own, if that doesn't sound sort of wildly strange, but that's the truth, you know, and I've always been a sort of watcher of people, you know, again, in a sort of least creepy way possible. I've always taken interest in just watching people, and, you know, even people I cross on the street, I'm trying to work out, okay, like, you know, what's their background and what are their family like and what job do I think they potentially do and this, that and the other, and, you know, that's just been something I've always had an interest in people, really, and I've always preferred communicating, you know.
You've shown a lot of versatility over your 10-year screen career, but it all started for you in 2007.
As I understand it, Susie Figgis, the casting director from the UK, who's fantastic, and, you know, I owe her a great deal, was looking to cast two young boys in a film, an independent film called Son of Rambow, Rambow with a W at the end, and they came around to my school, I think, at a kind of sort of last-ditch attempt to find who they were looking for. Just because, as I say, my school wasn't necessarily a performance school, and they were also looking for a young sort of Cockney kid. So they were typically looking in the East End of London, and they hadn't sort of come west at all. Anyway, I was literally in I believe an English lesson, and my very eccentric, lovely drama teacher, Laura, slammed a piece of paper on the window with audition at 3 o'clock written on it. And she was doing this through the window. And I'm trying to sort of pay attention, going, okay, got it. You know, trying not to get in trouble. And I'm there, and for the next sort of, you know, 30 minutes or whatever it was, you know, and it felt like forever, I was thinking, I'm going to go on an audition. I've never been on one of those. What is that?
And I've got to get out of double French at 3 o'clock.
And that's what I was excited about. And I went, you know, not thinking anything would come of it, just kind of excited to perform in front of a camera for the first time in my life. You know, they filmed the audition. And then I kind of kept slipping through the net and going through these different phases, and ended up sort of chemistry reading, as they say, with the amazing Bill Milner, who is the son of Rambow. And I just remember my mum getting a call one day after this sort of final stage of the audition, and my mum was on the phone in the kitchen, and she just said, "He didn't." And they said something to the effect of, "He did," and then she said, "He didn't." And my mother said that maybe 14 times before she put down the phone, which, you know, not that she sort of doubted me, but it was, you know, an amazing, unthinkable sort of thing to happen. And I was very lucky, and I proceeded to have kind of the best 8 weeks of my life shooting it. And I'm very lucky that my, you know, entry into the industry was as wholesome and kind of well parented, you know, by Garth Jennings and Nick Goldsmith, the creators. And Son of Rambow just became this sort of kind of little engine that could and did. It was wild.
And after those 8 weeks and beyond that, with the great reviews and the acclaim for the movie, how did you keep your feet on the ground through all this? Because there's not many kids who are suddenly sort of movie stars, and it's not like you're at a stage school. So what was your life like at that period? And did you start to worry, oh, this might be the only film, or did you automatically think, oh, there's going to be loads to follow this? What was going on in your head at the time?
I think when you're as underwhelming at school as I was, one thing your parents, will instill in you is this idea that you have to work hard. And that was one thing my parents always sort of said to me, so we don't really care about the grade or what you achieve, but as long as we know you're trying your hardest. So after Son of Rambow, I was struck with this idea, that it could all disappear tomorrow unless I worked really hard. And I think, I'm not necessarily the most talented, and I've had a great deal of fortune, but I have always worked my hardest. I've always kind of prided myself on having a work ethic, to be proud of, and that's something that I've tried to sort of hold to, this idea that so long as I can walk away from any task and say I did my best, and I'm not questioning whether I could have given more, then I'm happy, whatever the result. I might be disappointed, but as long as I've given my best, I can't beat myself up too much, and that's just kind of helped ever since Son of Rambow. But I was certain of the fact that was what I wanted to do. I mean, I was a week into shooting, and I said to my mum and dad, I was like, well, I'm going to be an actor. This is it. This is what I want to do. And they said, okay, chill, calm down, because for them, their son was trying to be an astronaut, and it was still, a little bit far-fetched, but they were never unsportive by any means.
Well, talk about an astronaut. You were virtually, on the shuttle next, because you go on to the Chronicles of Narnia franchise with a role in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So you, as a kid, I understand, were a huge fan of sort of Narnia. What was it like finding yourself as part of this magical world?
Really bizarre, I mean, I kind of don't pay much attention to the budgets of a film, but it was kind of strange going from a movie that we made on the sort of lunch budget of Narnia to this huge gigantic set on the coast of Australia, and I was 16, and it meant that my mum and my sister and my dad for some part had to move with me. My older brother and sister actually stayed home, but that really does I think sort of exemplify just how supportive they were of me. They literally packed up their lives and moved to the other side of the world, about as far away from London as you could get. And it was an amazing opportunity. I'd seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's one of the most kind of cherished sort of works of children's literature, or just literature, in history. So to be in the film adaptation of one of those books was wild, and it was a very maturing experience. Michael Apter, the director, didn't really treat me like a kid. You might argue he might well have, but I got the opportunity to kind of be an adult on that set, even though I was playing a real kind of juvenile brat. He didn't actually give me a lot of praise, and didn't really put his arm around me. In a way, he sort of forced me into a position where I had to prove my worth, and at the end of a take, it was a head nod, we're moving on. It wasn't a kind of mollycoddling sort of situation, and I'm really grateful for that. That kind of tough love and more adult interaction was really helpful.
You went on to work for a director who'd been a child star himself, Dexter Fletcher. A wonderful 2011 film we screened here at BAFTA LA called Wild Bill. Thoroughly recommend you check it out if you're not sort of familiar with it. That was when the world really sat up and took notice of your acting abilities. For anyone who's not familiar, tell us what the character was and what your experience was making that movie.
Wild Bill kind of came across my agent's desk, and I got an opportunity to read it, and I heard that Dexter Fletcher had seen Son of Rambow and was therefore kind of mildly interested in me auditioning. I didn't think I'd get a shot because, and more to your question, this was a young adult really, and I was 16 years old playing 17. I looked about 11, which didn't help. I was literally half the size. And I didn't think I would get a shot at all. And then I find myself in front of Dexter Fletcher, who I know well, from right through from Babyface all the way through to Lock, Stock. And I proceed to give one of the world's worst auditions. I mean, it is truly, it's awful. And I come out of the room, I think in tears, on the phone to my mum, saying, I blew it, I blew it. And a few days later, Dexter ends up calling me up and offering it to me. And which I couldn't quite believe. But I was sort of instilled with this feeling that I had to prove my worth to him all the way through. And to be honest, I think during Wild Bill, I appreciate the kind words. I think Wild Bill is a great film, and I'm immensely proud to be a part of it. But I'm not immensely proud of my performance actually in it. And I look back on it and I kind of see someone who was lacking in confidence, and I think in a desperate sort of attempt to prove himself. And I think I've since changed my attitudes towards performance in general, and I look at it as a less kind of technical thing, actually. But perhaps I needed to go through the experience of Wild Bill to come to that realization.
You say an interesting thing there. I mean, are you one of these actors who hates to watch themselves on screen? Have you gone full Johnny Depp and just never watched the film, or do you watch it in a judgmental way? What's it like for you now, with the distance of time, to watch your latest movies?
The first time you're watching a movie, you're just sort of remembering the process, and really your memory's just being jogged about the experience of shooting on set. Second time, it's an eye-gouging, horrible experience, analysing every single mistake you make. And the third time, you get to appreciate it for the movie it is. And then beyond that, I don't really want to watch it again. It's normally a kind of like three sort of strike deal for me. That's the truth of it.
Well, a movie of yours that I've seen at least 3 times is your first Hollywood comedy, We're the Millers, where you star with Jennifer Aniston and Jason Sudeikis. Hysterically funny film, at least one very memorable scene for you in that one. Yeah. Anyone who's seen it will know what I'm talking about there. So, yes, tell us about this experience of suddenly being thrust into a Hollywood comedy.
Yeah, that was really interesting. That was my first time actually kind of working sort of, I say away from home and without any family, Mm-hmm. I was literally the only English person on set, which was kind of strange. And at the time, I felt like I was the only English person in Wilmington, North Carolina, which can't have been true, but it felt quite lonely, to be honest. And With the Millers, for as fun as it was really tough. I was really lonely out there, and I found it difficult, but Jennifer and Jason were wonderful to me. Rawson as a director really fought for me from the beginning, because I think, in the marketing campaign it was, Emma Roberts, Jennifer Aniston, Jason Sudeikis, and who the hell is that kid? And I really needed the support of people like Jason and people like Rawson to kind of, I think, to convince the studio that to take a shot on this lanky little English boy. And I do not underestimate what We're the Millers did for me, as far as I think doing other roles in America and having other opportunities made available to me. But for such a sort of funny, light-hearted movie, it was quite a slog. And I think playing such a kind of introverted, sort of battered, awkward, in many ways sort of self-loathing character actually had its effect on me after a while.
And next you go on to The Maze Runner, 2014, a lot of dystopian teen movies being made around that time. Yeah. This was one of the best of them. Now, when you're in a big franchise launcher like that, how do you ignore all the bells and the whistles and still find the performance and the character? Talk about challenge you had there.
First of all, and I have to give massive props to Fox for this. They appointed Wes Ball as the director, and they didn't necessarily go for a highly experienced, and I mean this with no disrespect to Wes, he would say this himself, a highly experienced, well-known person. Wes, up until that point, had won the Student Oscar for his phenomenal short. They appointed this young man, effectively, to take on this project that was The Maze Runner and was potentially going to be 3 films. And that was so inspiring. And I think he got it purely based on merit and because he had an incredible vision for the film and he had a wonderful grasp of the story. And, you know, I found myself working with just this phenomenally talented young cast, an incredibly diverse cast as well, you know, all of us from different corners of the world, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, you know, across a bit of an age range too, and it was an absolute blast.
And you are rewarded with the BAFTA Rising Star Award. What did that mean to you? Was it one big celebration? Was it daunting, you know, to have that responsibility? What do you remember of that time 3 years ago?
First of all, I'm really grateful for the fact that BAFTA even took notice of what I was doing, I think, and noticed me in such a way. You know, I was hugely honoured by it. And I'd seen, you know, previous winners, which I was a major fan, you know, whether it was, you know, Tom Hardy or James McAvoy, you know, I couldn't believe that I was even nominated for something that they had won in the past. That was wild to me. You know, and they've gone on to recognise some fantastic talents, you know, some friends of mine are amongst them, Jack and O'Connell, for example, being one of them. You know, so it's wild to be part of that kind of little alumni. At the time, I'm not sure I really kind of. I mean, the night itself was such a blur. You know, I like went with my mum. We sat down. We had a nice time. Next thing I know, they called my name, and I didn't really ever truly expect that. But hugely grateful, and it was a massive confidence booster as well for me personally. You know, to have that support.
And you go on to work with another of the greats, Leonardo DiCaprio, in The Revenant.
That still sounds weird to me when you say that. That still sounds weird for me. I'm still not over
No, you're on the same poster as Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell?
Yeah. Now, everything we've heard about the making of that movie sounds like absolutely hellish and suffering for the art. You know, tell me it was all, you know, trailers and cocktails and heaters, or did you really struggle on that one?
You know, it's funny. I mean, I'm hesitant to complain at all as an actor who is lucky enough to work, you know, first and foremost. But if I may, that one was tough. That was 7 months, either side of a Christmas break, in, I mean, some of the most remote, harsh, unforgiving sort of terrain and conditions imaginable. And, you know, emotionally it was tough, but physically it was outrageous. With all that being said, I was working with Alejandro González Iñárritu. I was working with the great Emmanuel Lubezki, the most insanely talented crew, and of course Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hardy, Donald Gleeson, to name but a few of the kind of incredible actors that were part of that project. So it was like, tough it up. Like, it was, you know, there was no opportunity to kind of complain or stop. It was like, this is what it is. And I think for the most part, it was necessary for what we had to capture. And, you know, Alejandro is about, you know, authenticity. And I think, you know, throughout his career, he's demonstrated this. He's about trying to put the viewers in the shoes of other people and make them feel their experience. And very much like Catherine Bigelow, actually, you know, they have a wonderful ability to immerse their actors in such a way that elicits a very, very natural performance, I think, and in turn makes the viewing experience very immersive and very natural and real. And you know, the opportunity to create empathy and an understanding that way is huge.
Then another A-list director, Catherine Bigelow, who you just mentioned, hires you for Detroit in perhaps not the most obvious role for you as a redneck, racist, bully boy cop.
Right.
And I mean, you were so completely hateful in that movie. I feel I should move the chair a bit sort of like further away. First of all, how much of a gift or a challenge is it as an actor to play such the opposite of yourself, a character, I presume, with such psychopathic tendencies, you can't relate to him in any way?
You know, I've played less than likable characters before, but I think it was virtually impossible to find an entry point into this character because there was nothing that I could really relate to. There was no element of his psychological makeup or personality that I recognized in myself, and there was much less that I could respect. You know, even when I've played less than likable characters, I've been able to identify something, and I think you hear a lot of actors, and understandably so, talk about the need to sort of respect their character. I think the second I kind of over-distilled the racist rhetoric down to it being a kind of self-righteous ignorance, because that's effectively what it is to me. I mean, racist people are wildly misguided and some of the most misinformed human beings on planet Earth, and they've learnt this poisonous behavior. They've been taught this mythology about people of color and the threat that they supposedly pose to white people. The second I realized that my character thinks he's right, wholeheartedly, and the thought that he might be entirely wrong does not even cross his mind, I was onto something. And you see it echoed in society, you know, all too frequently. And you can go on YouTube and you can watch interviews with individuals who think the same way as my character, and they operate today, you know, in society. They walk among us. It's terrifying. So unfortunately, there was enough material there in the research process to start building the flesh around the skeleton that was Kraus. And by the way, that does a disservice to what was an incredibly well-formed character on the page, actually. You know, Mark Boal, the writer, takes a kind of journalistic approach to his writing, and everything is so well researched and so well fleshed out. I mean, this character jumped off the page as a monster already, really. It was sometimes as simple as just saying the things that he said, using some of that dehumanizing language and that wildly misguided talk.
How do you reflect on the journey you've made, and what's your vision of the next 10 years?
I don't know. That's what's scary. I really don't know. You know, I have remained very aware of how lucky I've been up until this point, and I don't want it to slip away. I'm keen on, as I say, trying to be, you know, fulfill my potential as a creative, and I don't mean just as far as what I can offer entertainment-wise. I think as far as sort of, you know, speaking to what's going on outside of the walls of the movie theatre. And, you know, I very luckily just worked with Lenny Abramson on a project called The Little Stranger. We're actually reunited with Donald Gleason, which was fantastic, and Ruth Wilson's in that project, Charlotte Rampling. So yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing in that one. I'm very lucky. That's coming out next year, and beyond that, you know, I'm kind of waiting to see and find out. But just keen to, you know, keep working hard and heap up every opportunity that comes my way.
Well, we look forward to everything you do in the future.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.